say to those people and those allegations after all these years?
This interview was not supposed to touch on personalities or personal things. So I must ask you to forgive me for not answering you.
Fair enough.
And what is skimming? It's the art of taking money out of a casino without anyone supposedly knowing. Off the books, untaxed, undetected, pure profit. Skimming, a federal attorney once asked Jimmy Fratianno, that's just taking profits and not paying taxes on them, right? Fratianno didn't blink. That's correct, sir. Is that where the big bucks were? Yes, sir. Fratianno and his lawyer had only scratched the surface. The truth was, if you knew where to look, the skim was everywhere. Chips vanish before they hit the table. Fill slips signed for, but never fulfilled. Slot machines miscounted on purpose. Entire stacks of cash redirected before the books even saw them. The mob had turned Nevada into a legal money laundering machine, with the casino cage as the front door and Chicago, Kansas City, and New York as the exit. It's a crowded holiday weekend. Tourists flood the casino floor. A pit boss, half bored and half alert, sees the tray at a $25 blackjack table running low. He radios for a refill. Lots of white ones, he says, meaning $100 chips. The chip runner arrives at the cage, grabs the shipment under armed guard, and heads for the pit. But he doesn't make it. Somewhere along the route, the chips get rerouted, diverted into the casino's drop box, then quietly slipped into a system designed for one thing: to disappear. In a few days, maybe even hours, that money is laundered into clean cash and placed in the back pocket of someone in Kansas City. Maybe it lands in Chicago. Maybe it buys silence. Maybe it buys power. In the count room, the sleight of hand continues. A scale, designed to weigh slot coins, is rigged off by just enough to skim. 90 silver dollars hit the tray. The scale reads 100. It happens over and over, day after day, year after year. Meanwhile, upstairs, a man in a suit, calling himself the entertainment director, writes checks worth thousands. He cashes them at the main cage. Then, late at night, when the casino's hot and the floor is buzzing, he rides the elevator to the 4th floor, intercepts the checks, and tears them up. No paper trail, no audit, just cash. That man? Joe Agosto, the Kansas City mob's point man at the Tropicana, moonlighting as the man behind the Folies Bergère show in 1975. A mobster in a tuxedo. Skimming wasn't just a hustle. It was a system. Chips stolen in transit. Cash walked out the back door. Slot machines jimmied. The accounting books cooked by mob-friendly CPAs or simply ignored. And when did all else fail? Open the box and snatch the cash, a Kansas City mobster once told a protégé. Even Las Vegas Metro Intelligence Commander Preston Hubbs had to admit it. The cash flow in gambling is so high volume, so messy, it was only natural the mob would exploit it. In the 1950s, only a few people really understood how the money moved, and most of them worked for Lansky. It was Lansky, the mob's accountant, who built the Playbook for global money movement. Quiet, invisible, and intricate. His Florida associate, Alvin Malnick, perfected the skim in ways that still give FBI agents headaches. Take a wiretapped conversation from October 1979. Malnick is meeting with 2 associates and FBI undercover agent Tony Amoroso Jr., discussing the Aladdin Hotel Casino over lunch in Hallandale, Florida. The room was dark, paneled in quiet money and old favors. It wasn't flashy. Too many flashy guys wound up on the wrong end of a sidewalk. This was a deal room, where promises were whispered and fortunes turned over with a handshake. Weinberg sat across from Malnick, his expression tight, guarded. He had heard too much already, Whispers from Vegas, grumblings out of Chicago, rumors that the place was bleeding from the inside. He leaned forward slightly, voice clipped but pressing. "We were told there are 6 guys out there with their hands in the till," he said. "And you can't get rid of them unless you want a war. How much truth is there to that?" Malnick didn't flinch. If he was hiding anything, it didn't show. He answered like a man sealing a deal with his life behind it. "I'm going to deliver to you a package, a casino, where nobody's hands are in the till except your own. You'll run it. You'll control it. And any cut that comes out, comes through you." Weinberg let that hang for a second. The kind of promise that could either make you rich or get you buried in the desert. "And the pit bosses?" he asked, voice sharp. Malnick gave a small, knowing smile, like a guy who had already greased every wheel before anyone even knew it was turning. "Nobody will steal," he said, "because presumably you'll be taking care of everyone." And just like that, the game was set. A casino, clean on paper, but already pulsing with the quiet heartbeat of control, where loyalty was currency and the house didn't just win. It owned the game. That's how the game worked. You didn't clean up a skim. You redirected it. You replaced thieves with loyal thieves. The Aladdin, like the Stardust, had long been mob turf. But the state finally stepped in, receivership, indictments, and convictions for several Detroit crime figures. And Malnick. His connections to Caesar's Palace owner Clifford Pearlman forced the state to tighten their reporting rules. In 1976, Caesars sold off 2 resorts in Pennsylvania for $15 million to Malnick's company, Associates of Miami. Then Caesars leased them back. The money? It came from the Teamsters Central States Pension Fund. 2 of Malnick's partners were sons of Sam Cohen, the Flamingo president, who'd done time for skimming $36 million between 1960 and 1967. Even amateurs learned the Lansky blueprint. Joe Agosto once bragged to Kansas City's Nick Civella, "We can steal that here, you know? $1 million, without even going downstairs." He was talking about using the floor shows, the Foley's Bergère, as a front. Just bake the skim into the budget. Carl Thomas, a Kansas City mob associate turned casino executive, explained the problem with slot machine skimming. "You grab $10,000 in coins? You can't lift 10,000 in nickels. You'd need 50 guys in relay just to carry it." Skimming wasn't about nickels anymore. It was about envelopes of $100 bills tucked inside coat linings and shipped out in plain sight. Thomas, respected in Nevada, was caught on FBI tapes giving a masterclass on how to skim to Civella himself in a Kansas City basement. "You skim 40 grand a week, clean, in cash," he said. "Nobody knows." In June 1983, the walls finally started to crack. Joe Agosto turned government witness. 6 men went down for the Tropicana Scheme. Nick Civella, his brother Carl, Chicago boss Joseph Ayupa, underboss Jack Cerrone, Carl DeLuna, and others. They had rigged the trop from the top floor down, Agosto using his ties to Civella to freeze out competing buyers. With the right union pull, they torpedoed deals, won over new owners, and took over the 4th floor. From there, the skim was effortless. IRS investigator Ryan Corrigan said it best. "Every skimming operation has one common denominator, the cage. If you don't control the cage, you don't control the money." And the mob? They always controlled the cage. The question and answer exchange at the top of this story, between Mafia informant Jimmy Fratianno and examining attorney Norman Grootman, took place in a court-ordered closed deposition at a hidden location in connection with a civil suit involving Penthouse Magazine and various owners of the Rancho La Costa Resort in Southern California. The topic at hand was the practice of secretly removing cash from casino count rooms. The room was thick with silence, the kind that settles in before something volatile gets stirred up. The overhead lights buzzed faintly as the committee members leaned forward, papers in hand, eyes locked on the man seated before them. A former mobster turned government witness. Jimmy Fratianno. His fingers twitched ever so slightly, the only sign that the past was crawling its way back to the surface. A senator, his voice cool but laced with curiosity, broke the silence first. The committee member leaned back in his chair and studied Fratianno. Would you tell me in some more detail the way by which the La Cosa Nostra worked its way into Las Vegas? Fratianno didn't blink. His voice came steady, like he was reading from the script of a movie he'd already lived through a dozen times. Well, when Benny Bugsy Siegel was there, he told us to put people there, into casinos. We didn't do it. Jack didn't want to do it. Jack thought that this is nothing. The senator interrupted, already knowing the name but wanting it on record. That is Jack Dragner, the late head of a Los Angeles crime faction? Yes, Jack Dragner, Fratianno replied, almost with a shrug. At that time, there weren't many places on the strip. I think there were only 3, and no business, you know. It isn't like anyone dreamed it ever was going to be like it is today. So, by not putting men there, it is an open city. Anybody could come in there and build and have a gambling casino. Another voice on the committee, sharper this time, pushed him further. But you have explained to us that the La Cosa Nostra did get into this open city. How did they do it? Fratianno smirked slightly, like he was about to reveal a magician's trick, only this one ended in blood and skimmed millions. Well, in other words, how they get in? I'll show you how they get in. Like the Cleveland family, they've been with Mo Dalitz, Lou Rhodey, Morris Kleinman, going back to the 30s. So now they decide to go up and open up a place. So they are automatically partners with them. So, in other words, the La Cosa Nostra might talk to you. You might have a lot of money. Somebody connected with the La Cosa Nostra. They will say, well, Mr. Grootman, you know, you are going to build a place. We would like to be your partner. Maybe I might invest a little money with you. It is possible. It is all done through friends and, you know. The committee member paused, shuffling through his notes, then asked with an arched brow, let me give you an example. Have you ever heard of a person called Russian Louis? Fratianno's eyes narrowed. Yes, sir. What was his real name? Louis Strauss. Was he a person in Las Vegas? Yes, sir. Was he murdered? Yes, sir. Who murdered him? There was no hesitation. I was one of them, sir. The air in the room thickened. Pens stopped moving. For a second, it felt like the ghost of Russian Louis himself might walk through the door. Did this murder of Russian Louis Strauss have any mob-related direction? Yes, sir. In consideration for rubbing Russian Louis out, were you offered an interest in one of these casinos? Yes, sir. When I say you, I mean the family for which you were working. Yes, sir. The senator didn't flinch. He pressed on, slow and methodical, like peeling back a rotted floorboard. What was the casino in which you were to have an interest in consideration for having assassinated or executed Russian Louis? Fratianno leaned in, dropping the bomb. Well, we were told if we did it, we would get 25% of a place Benny Binion was going to build across the street from him, which is the Fremont. Did you actually get the 25%? No, sir. But in certain casinos, the mob did acquire an interest by mob activities, did it not? Well, the mob had interests in a lot of casinos in Las Vegas, sir. The committee pressed deeper, like they were trying to scrape all the way down to the bone. Once they got such an interest, how did they keep control of it? Well, they would have a man there, a front man. And what would the front man do to look after the mob's interest? Well, he would more or less get the skim and give it to somebody and look after their interests. He would be in on the count. You see, the count is in the room where they count the money. The senator leaned in. How would the mob make sure it was getting what was supposed to be coming to it? They had people there watching. And when the mob thought it wasn't getting what it was supposed to get, what kind of reprisals, if any, did the mob take? Fratianno's answer came cold. No embellishment, no pause. Just the truth. Well, they are liable to do anything. They would threaten them, and they would get maybe pretty mad. Maybe go as far as killing them. According to Jimmy Fratianno, Russian Louis's bones, along with those of several other wayward La Cosa Nostra members, rest in a San Bernardino vineyard, once owned by former LCN underboss Joey DiPolito. There is a saying among Las Vegas gamblers with outstanding debts. "I'll pay you when Russian Louis gets back." When the late Nick Civella and other high-ranking members of his Kansas City crime family slipped over to Josephine Marlowe's basement next door to talk business, they had no idea they would be cutting a 5-hour tape that would turn out to be one of the Federal Bureau of Investigation's greatest hits. The meeting, which Civella held at Mrs. Marlowe's home in hopes that it would take place outside the range of government surveillance, ended up providing the federal government with a classic discussion on how to skim money from Nevada casinos. The year was 1978, and the contents of the recording were solid gold. Former Nevada casino executives Carl Thomas and the late Joseph Agosto, both identified as associates or members of the crime family, are captured on tape trying to explain the complexities of casino skimming to Nick Civella, his brother Carl Civella, and underboss Carl DeLuna. The room felt sealed off from the world, thick with cigarette smoke, the low hum of slot machines somewhere in the distance. It was late, too late for small talk. Thomas leaned in, elbows on the edge of the table, eyes glinting with the confidence of a man who'd run this play before. "See?" he started, voice low and deliberate. "The cashier is with us. You follow me? You grab the cashier's keys from the cashier. That's the guy we got in the cage. We take the key, open the box, and snatch the money." He paused, letting the weight of that sink in. Then he continued, gesturing with his hand like he was sketching the scheme out in mid-air. Now, what they've been doing in the past, which is very, very dangerous, is faking fill slips. You make a fill slip for $10,000, make another for $7,000, and then you have to go back there and get the fill slip into the box. He looked over at Agosto, who gave a knowing nod. But see, Tropicana hasn't had that much cash in the past to snatch. So they would put the fill slip in there and take $10,000 in cash. That's why we need the cashier to get the money. Now, once he can get back there, once the drop starts going up, he can just grab the cash, like this. There's no record of anything. Thomas flicked his fingers like he was plucking a bill from thin air. But he has to get the keys unless we go some other way. But the way I'd like to do it, I could do it in my own joint, because my joint is small and everybody belongs to me. "Yeah," Agosto muttered, his tone short and clipped. Thomas nodded. "But you can't do that at the Tropicana. The best way to do it has always been the fill slip scam. Up until the Argent scam, everybody was making some money." Agosto shrugged, voice resigned. "That's true." Thomas leaned in again. "Okay, let's say tonight is the time." "All right," Agosto answered, his voice like a trigger being cocked. "They come in, take the fill book, and they're going to grab $7,500. They make a fill slip." Agosto echoed him, locked into the rhythm. "They're going to grab $7,500. Thomas was quick to confirm. "Sure, they make a fill slip for $7,500. $7,500, right? Okay, they take it over to our cashier." DeLuna raised his hand slightly, breaking in with a tone that said he didn't want to be left in the dark. "Nick, Carl, maybe you'd better tell all of us, what is a fill slip?" Thomas turned to him, face relaxing slightly. "Oh, I'm sorry. When a table runs short on money, you have to get money for the game. You just can't go and get chips. So you make a fill slip and fill the table up. You're making fill slips every 10 or 15 minutes. Nick Civella cut in, voice dry and suspicious. In other words, you go to the cashier and get chips? Right, Thomas said, nodding. Civella narrowed his eyes. What do you do with this fill slip legitimately? Fill slips, legitimately, Thomas echoed, then explained. There are 3 copies. DeLuna pressed again. All right. What do you do with it? You make 3 copies for $7,500, Thomas said, his voice mechanical now, like he'd walked people through this 100 times. All right, DeLuna muttered, trying to keep up. You sign it. The other guy signs it. Say, the floor man. Then you take it to the cashier. He takes it, timestamps it. Boom. All 3 copies. Time copies? Civella asked, almost annoyed. Time stamps it, Thomas corrected. The cashier stamps it, just like a bank with a time clock. Boom. 11:17 at night. Okay, Civella said, tight-lipped. And then, Thomas went on, the cashier signs the slip. Then the cashier legitimately pushes out $7,500 in chips. That's a legitimate fill. There was a beat. Then he pivoted, voice dropping into a darker tone. Now, when they do it illegitimately, they go through the same process. They take the 3 fill slips, go to the cashier, he signs it, keeps a copy, but no chips, nothing leaves the cage. Agosto's voice broke through like a blade. He doesn't give you any chips? No chips, Thomas said coldly. There was silence, a heavy silence. Then he finished the thought. Later in the night, the $7,500 is simply removed from the cage and treated as a loss to a winning gambler. Meyer Lansky may have been a pioneer in casino skimming, but others soon learned the trade. In 1978, Joe Agosto was speaking to his bosses in Kansas City. I think that we have devised a system up here. You know what I mean? Where we could get the money without going through all this shenanigan on the ground floor. You know what I mean? Let's say that supposedly we had a commitment of $1 million a year, you know? Or $1.5 million or whatever it is. We can steal that here, you know? The $1 million here, you know? Without us going downstairs. He's talking about through the shows, explained Carl Thomas, the ousted casino owner and Kansas City crime associate to the late Nick Civella, former boss of the Kansas City crime family. You're making it sound like you think that's a lot of money, Civella joked. Thomas then outlined the logistical issues of skimming slot machines, similar to what was uncovered at the Stardust while it was under former owner Alan Glick's control. You have to convert to cash. See, if you go grab $10,000, you can't just lift $10,000 in change. We'd need 50 guys in relays to carry that much. Charlie Parsons, former Nevada FBI organized crime chief and now the second in command at the Bureau's Kansas City office, noted the irony in the Thomas tapes. At the time, he was a very respected member of the Nevada gaming industry, and here he is, in a Kansas City basement with the Kansas City family, giving a virtual lesson on how to skim. Thomas continued, explaining the value of a hidden bank right on the casino floor, putting it in terms that Civella could better appreciate. You can convert to cash. You skim off $40,000 a week in singles and grab the $40,000 in $100 bills and nobody knows. Or, as he put it, they could simply steal the money outright. I think if you do things out in the open, you stare the guy right in the face. The guy won't think you're doing anything. In June 1983, with Agosto testifying against the mob, 6 defendants were convicted of charges stemming from the Tropicana Scheme. Among those convicted were Nick Civella and his brother Carl Civella, the aging titular boss of Kansas City, along with Carl DeLuna, also accused in the Stardust skimming case set to go to trial that year. They were convicted alongside Chicago boss Joseph Iupa and underboss Jack Cerrone. Agosto had wormed his way into the Tropicana's bank in typical fashion, and with surprising ease. Owner Del Gustafson used Agosto's influence with Nick Civella to keep prospective buyers Ed and Fred Dumaney at bay. The Dumaneys, who had sought Teamster funding to buy the Tropicana, ran into problems with Teamster boss Roy Williams, thanks to Civella's clout with the union. Gustafson was eventually forced to sell the casino, and Mitzi Stauffer Briggs took over. Agosto wasted no time winning Briggs's favor and soon took control of the showroom, even though he wasn't licensed. Before long, he had the fourth floor, and the money was his for the taking. Agosto's fourth-floor Skim aside, almost every casino scam had a common denominator. The cage would have to be involved in any skimming operation, said Reno IRS Superintendent Ryan Corrigan, who had investigated several casino skimming operations. The question and answer exchange at the top of this story between Mafia informant Jimmy Fratianno and examining attorney Norman Grootman took place in a court-ordered closed deposition at a hidden location in connection with a civil suit involving Penthouse Magazine and various owners of the Rancho La Costa Resort in Southern California. The topic at hand was the practice of secretly removing cash from casino count rooms. The following colloquy picks up on that theme, providing a mob's eye view of how La Cosa Nostra LCN infiltrated casinos and cashed in on hidden ownership. In theory, casinos were fortresses, fortified by surveillance, layers of bureaucracy, and the illusion of legitimacy. But beneath the glimmer of chandeliers and the hypnotic whir of slot machines, the mob found cracks in the walls, and they slid right in. The house, it turned out, didn't always win. Lieutenant Colonel Justin Dintino of the New Jersey State Police didn't mince words. Legalized gambling operations, he said, have become a conduit for funds derived from organized crime activity. And he wasn't speaking hypothetically. Judge Irving Kaufman, chairman of the President's Commission on Organized Crime, made it even plainer. Skimming wasn't just theft. It was bleeding Nevada dry of tax money. The honest citizen paid what the mob stole: credit fraud, illegal junkets, phantom checks, untraceable markers. It was a shadow economy built on lies and whispers, where casino floors became cash registers for the underworld. Casinos had a legal escape hatch, the write-off. Uncollected credit wasn't just tolerated, it was absorbed into the books like bad weather in farming. That loophole became a pipeline for shady deals, where mobsters took credit they never intended to repay, or worse, farmed out the debts to leg breakers who collected in full, and kept the cash. IRS agent Richard Wassenaar didn't need a theory. He had the evidence. He'd seen the books, watched the patterns. Checks get logged, he said. Cash disappears. Skimming wasn't a practice, it was a profession. In Detroit, the collectors weren't men in suits. They were mob associates with baseball bats in the trunk. When they came knocking, the gamblers knew who sent them. Ryan Corrigan of the IRS's office put it bluntly: the player knows who's making the collection. The schemes weren't limited to backroom deals. In 1976, a memo from Audit Division Chief Dennis Gomez revealed an operation straight out of a heist film. 54 conmen from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware hit the Paradise Hotel Casino for over $300,000 using fake names, fake companies, and fake credit. They played the part of high-rolling businessmen, charmed the casino brass, and looted the place blind. 2 months later, they tried the same con at the Marina Casino. They almost pulled it off, until the audit division got wind of it. The Marina had already handed out $80,000. If they hadn't caught it in time, it would have been another $400,000 disaster. Same city, same game, different stage. At the landmark casino, 15 men, many with mob ties, secured over $300,000 in credit by exploiting weak internal controls and a clueless hotel manager. One of them, going by Eddie Thomas, turned out to be Edward Sarkisian, the same man who orchestrated a nearly $1 million credit fraud at the Tropicana. He was convicted for passing a fake check worth $29,900. To the Justice Department, Sarkisian wasn't a gambler. He was an architect of white-collar theft. These weren't isolated cases. They were symptoms of a broken system. The Caputo case, a legal landmark, proved that casinos could be held liable when they violated their own credit rules. Some properties tightened up, requiring gamblers to lose their own cash before being handed credit. Others didn't get the memo, or chose to ignore it. In New Jersey, Dintino kept sounding the alarm. Credit fraud is still a major problem, he said. And with no mandate for background checks on credit applications, the crooks kept slipping through the cracks. If casinos were taxed on all credit issued, whether collected or not, Dintino mused, you'd see fewer abuses. But in Nevada, the industry wouldn't budge. Any talk of taxing credit was sacrilege. Still, the scams rolled on. Spring came with another federal indictment, this time against Philip Peter Special, a chameleon of aliases, Peter Wilson, Philip Gallo. He applied for credit at 7 casinos across Reno, Vegas, and Atlantic City. His references? Himself. He played the role of his own banker over the phone and gave glowing reports to casino officials. It worked. He walked away with thousands. New Jersey police cracked one of the biggest scams in 1980. $3 million ripped from Boardwalk Regency, Park Place, and Resorts International. Al Rosen, then a Park Place executive, handed out $2.5 million in credit like it was candy. One recipient was Vito Internicola, a well-known scam artist from Staten Island. Rosen later claimed it was just bad judgment. Maybe. But the damage was done. Sometimes the names read like a cast list out of a Mafia movie. Charles Joseph Alaimo, a.k.a. Charles Atlas, ties to the Colombo and Gambino families. Salvatore Sammy Meatballs Aparo, a Genovese associate with a rap sheet as thick as a phone book. Angelo Ugitano, a Lucchese soldier who registered under the name Angelo Borgia. These weren't weekend warriors. These were men with blood on their hands and connections from New York to San Diego. And they were checking in at the MGM Grand as if they belonged there. Some paid back their markers. Others didn't. The ones who didn't, the debts got written off, or collected the old-fashioned way. Ash Resnick, the legendary Las Vegas host, vouched for one of them, James Wilson, possibly Jake Bove. He had tens of thousands in unpaid debts at multiple casinos, and Resnick instructed Caesars to send the markers to New York for collection. Who collected them? Nobody asked. Then there were the junketeers, the real magicians of the underworld. They brought in the whales, made the introductions, took a cut, and often disappeared when the bills came due. Joseph Mazza ran junkets to the dunes. He had bookmaking arrests, a gaming permit, and a smile that disarmed everyone. He also had deep ties to the Magadino crime family. When the control board made him take a polygraph, the examiner flatly said he was lying about everything. Paul Pearls was another. He earned $2,000 a month from the Aladdin while hiding $8,500 in unpaid markers from Caesars. He worked with Resnick, dodged collections, and once told agents he might repay a $4,000 debt if I have to. That kind of talk didn't worry casinos. They knew the game. If debts weren't paid, they'd be outsourced to the mob's collection team. Detective Sergeant William Kisby, who'd been tracking junket scams for years, put it plainly. Organized crime is in the junket business. They manipulate companies and people, profit indirectly, and stay one step away from regulation. Frank Schreck, once on the Gaming Commission, now one of Nevada's top gaming lawyers, admitted it. We were lax, but things are changing. Not fast enough. Behind every velvet rope, Every smiling dealer and every comped suite, there was a deal. Some were clean, many were not. And when guys like Melvin Weinberg and Alvin Malnick talked business, it sounded less like a partnership and more like a blood oath. "We were told there are 6 guys with their hands in the till," Weinberg said. "You can't get rid of them unless you want a war." Malnick didn't blink. "You got me. I'll deliver a package where no one's skimming, unless it's your people doing it." He meant it. The Aladdin, like the Stardust before it, had been a mob playground. But after the feds unearthed a hidden ownership scheme tied to Detroit's organized crime family, it was seized by the state. Malnick? He played in bigger leagues. He was tied to Clifford Pearlman of Caesar's Palace. In 1976, Pearlman's company sold off 2 resorts for $15 million to Malnick's group, Associates of Miami, and then leased them back. The money came from the Teamsters Pension Fund, the same one that had bankrolled skimming operations across Las Vegas. 2 of Malnick's partners were the sons of Sam Cohen, the former president of the Flamingo, who went to prison for a $36 million skim. Everyone had their hands in the till. The only question was, who would get caught first?